Most. You can start now.
Just talk, we will
What's
listen.
alright first? Happy Father's Day to so much for everyday husband mothers. We are here studying in this class to seek knowledge and wisdom. We are grateful for this wonderful day as we learn this from our teachers. We ask you to guide us through the legend, which we hope will improve our understanding of the world around us. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. So, today I'm presenting about the Louis Imogas River. This is Louis Imogas River. I will present about her early life and education of her. Louis Imogas River was born in Orleans, in New York on October 28, in 1907. Labor's father was associated with her was 7 and her mother Charles multiplied grade in a local one-room schoolhouse. While Labor's father was not interested in spiritual topics, but her mother was a spiritual matter of the high degree. Later in life, Labor claimed that her mother interpreted and consistencies were an injurious example of a Christian's life. Then Labor has two sisters, Mary and Janet. While Mary was a lifelong companion in education ministry, and her sister Janet died at the age of 36. And Labor families belonged to the People Methodist Church on East Orleans, a small Methodist church established by the large First Methodist Church of Orleans. And her mother was a respected Sunday school teacher in this congregation, but by the time of Labor's childhood, the church has been deeply influenced by the logic, liberalism of the largest denominations. And later in life, thinking that she was never exposed to the doctrine of Christ, economics, and the coming in the church, is then evaluated and have those as moralism, and says that Christianity could be defined as adherence to prescribed ethical code. So she has changed her quite natures with liberal, professionalism, personality, and by her own admissions, she developed a legalistic character that was echoed in self-reliance and dutiful obedience to parental rules. Labor followed her mother's footsteps and they were left after high school in 1935 to attend the Nell School, located about 18 miles northeast of Orleans. While she secured a first-grade teacher's appointment in Paris, New York, upon her graduation in 1938, her sister Mary also Jennifer Gregory started teaching graduate in Geneva, New York. And their improvements with a small group Bible study among her fellow teachers led to her salvation and full understanding of the gospel. She immediately began sharing this news with Louis, and in 1932, after a time of questioning, both sisters joined in embracing Jesus Christ as a personal Savior. After that, the sisters decided together that they would pursue vocational ministry. And the decision sustainably influenced Frank, and both sisters were forced to really quit hard camps, changing jobs, and a higher occupation. And Louis was additionally forced to break an agreement with a man who disapproved of her proposed career change. But despite this, however, the sister took the advice of the local minister and enrolled as full Bible student in 1933. So in the Christian education program, she studied under the President Bezos, an evangelical leader who was fighting hard to combat the public liberal religious education movement. After Louis and Mary Labor began teaching as Western College in 1945. Initially still a sport created by priests, lived to teach about the assembly. As the prophet of the permanent positions become more likely, the system recognizes their needs for doctrine labor treatment. The college preached on previous experience the laborers of the study at New York University in 1946 to 1949, and institutions that seems to welcome evangelicals into the religious education department. After laborers to begin writing the book that portrays her into the nation's spotlight, education that is created public for the first time in 1968, while respond to the poor changes she witnessed in her many visits to local churches. But her on the face of hundreds of evangelical Sunday school programs has revealed both lifeless teachings and contests related to the lives of students. Most evangelical teachings signaled she was nothing more than Paul Lee's preachings, proclaiming of the words with no appreciations for the needs and life state of the learners. Singles were the motive force from all learning in action. She started that teachers should begin with the student feels need in order to elicit interest and motivations for learning. When motivations generate in this way, the student will then be convinced with her in his real needs and guided word of God. The combination of student needs and divine revelations will generate both a deeper relationship with the living word and transforms like growing in his image. Labor Findings publications focused on people interest education in 1968. Labor suggested that the focus on institutional structures interest education has fostered a loss of conscience from the unique individual. The most important thing in life is that in the introduction in personal relation, being ready, related to God, to oneself, to others. Labor spoke of beginning with the promise of students before aliens, inners, she advocates both creativity and flexibility in things to know and know and ascend spiritual end. She spoke of the need to move from practice to theory rather than theories to practice. For laborers, insights were provided by a logical truth of scripture, an example of strategic method, biblical narrative. See, that is only nature that Christians should discover the truth about education before the secularizing. Christians should have greatest accent and insight into the eternal truth of the custom. This is always done and insight explanation of the timelessness of labor model of evangelical creation education. This is end of the presentation of devotion. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for allowing us to end this presentation so successfully. May you allow us to gain more information as we could use to serve other people. May you send your Holy Spirit to guide us in sharing this information to the world. We pray for the safety of all the people in the world. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Reservoir. You may now unshare. All right. The next presenter for the you go ahead, John, and find your topic. While you are doing that, let me say that the next to present the devotion would be Zhao. Okay. Yours is Lawrence Richards and HBLT, and then later on after Zhao, it's gonna be you, Christy C.S. Lewis. So when you are presenting, not just all words, yeah? Because you can read the words, but I would like to put also graphics. Remember the HBLT? You always remember what I put there in the as the standard for leading the devotion. Yeah, you also create the title, you put verses there. What lessons can we learn from the life of this person, and application that we can do today as 21st century ministers of the word. Yeah?
I think
Yes.
you're muted.
Emma? Oh.
You may now begin. John, say something about yourself when you are presenting. Will you
Oh,
tell
yeah.
us about yourself?
Yes.
Introduce yourself too. Yes.
That'll be actually the most of my intro will be about me. Hello, can you guys hear me? Yes?
Yes, bro.
Okay, thank you. So yes, today I'll be talking about the Christian education of children, and I titled this presentation "The Way They Should Go." And that's from a verse. Does anyone remember it? Proverbs. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll bring it up again later. But yeah, my name is John Inocencio. This was the date that I made the presentation, and this is for CE1. So today we'll be talking about the intro. I'll talk about myself a little bit and how I was influenced by the Christian education of children, particularly Sunday school. And then we'll talk about the sociological perspective, which is just the different developmental stages of life for each age group or human stages. And then we'll talk about societal trends, cultural influences and challenges, and how we can approach those. And then the relevant needs, which will be specific for each of our individual churches, but there are some questions that we can ask to identify what the needs are. And there's two main categories for those, as you can see, philosophical and personal. And then the strategies for children's ministry, that'll be the look part. So 1, 2, and 3 are the book part, and we'll mostly be spending time on 1 because there's a lot of good information there that we can cover. And then after the look part, at number 4, we'll conclude. So there's a picture of me. Actually, all the pictures that you're going to see here are from my church back in Canada. And so yes, it's from Proverbs. Start off children on the way they should go, and even when they're old, they will not turn from it. So I was born and raised in a Christian family, and my mom was actually my Sunday school teacher, as my dad held a house church when we were growing up, when I was very young. And then as I got older, I went to a larger church where I still attended the Sunday school there. So I'm very much a product of Christian education, and for me, I like to think that I'm still holding true to those values and living well. So I think, this verse is very true. I started off in the right way, and I was able to stick to it. And I know that's not the case for everybody, but I think generally it is very factual. And even for myself, as I got older and started serving in Sunday school, I was at the church that I was at previously to coming here for close to 7 years. So I saw kids go from people that I was serving to kids who are now serving alongside of me. So really, when you lay the foundation properly and you start children off in the way they should go, just like the verse says, it will really show later on in their life. And that's the intro. So the first thing we're going to look at is the sociological perspective, and this is just about considering and understanding the developmental needs and characteristics of the children for each developmental stage. So the first we'll talk about is infancy and birth. So this is from birth to 12 months. So at this stage in their life, they really just need their physical needs met. So they'll need responsive adults, and they need a safe and clean environment. And yeah, so for this stage of human development, they're not really talking or like thinking yet. They're still infants. So yeah, it can be, for people that are serving in this ministry, for this age group, it can feel like babysitting, but it's still really more than just babysitting, because you do have a unique opportunity, just like it says here, to minister to the parents. Because a lot of these parents, it takes a lot of trust for them to give up their kids to people who maybe they don't know yet, or they're still getting to know. So it's really a unique opportunity here in this age group to minister to the parents.
Please wait, John.
Yes.
How many of you here are having this toddler ministry in your church? Can your church accommodate the toddlers, the very young ones, babies, in your church? Do you have it? Churches at church in Isabela, Christy? wala kayong first floor for the very young one? No. What about JP in your current church? Current church. What about in Vietnam? Do you have it?
No.
Art in your church?
I think 3 years old.
Up,
Yeah.
but the ones pieces below.
1 year.
So right now, in your church, you also have it. Not right now. Philippine churches are not yet ready for this.
Oh,
But except for the very rich churches, because it's air conditioned, carpeted, you know, only a few. But
okay.
but I would like for you to understand this because someday when your church is ready, you will also be having this in mind.
Thank you, ma'am.
Do you also have it in Canada?
Yeah, we have this.
Ah, you have it.
Yeah.
So blessed, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, and just as a side note, this picture, it's two of my best friends and their babies. And
You are the one standing there.
no,
At the back.
it's a friend of mine. And
And
then,
they are all volunteer teachers.
so Becca, the girl, she ended up serving alongside me in the kids
Oh.
ministry. Yes, he used to help set up on the setup team, and then that's their daughter Mara. Okay, and so for toddlers, I guess if your kids ministry starts at 3, maybe you don't have this yet either. But just some things to keep in mind.
Yes, yes.
This is the age group where they'll start to have more motor control. So they'll start grabbing things. Maybe they're learning to crawl. And so at this age, you want to give them some more room. And for Bible stories, pictures really help a lot. It'll stimulate their mind. And if it's colorful, it'll help keep their attention as well. And at this age, attachments start to really form. So they'll recognize faces, and if the same people are the ones taking care of them, they'll start to form an attachment to them. And yeah, really, this is the first impressions that they can get of God, because as an authority figure, you're representing how they're going to deal with authorities. So in a way, it's like you're teaching them how to relate to God. And as they get older, they have more muscle control. And yeah, Bible stories are still very important. Songs, they can start to sing along. And again, songs and music just is another way to help keep their attention, because at this age, they do have a short interest span. But they can start learning about Jesus at this age, and they'll start to retain the things that you tell them. So it's a good age for them to start.
And right now in our classroom, there are 2 fathers. We have Pastor Juan. How old is your son?
6 years old.
6. And Art, how old is Sophia? 2 years old.
So
Oh, that's good.
lovely. Yes.
And Vince is about to have 1. And
Amazing.
JP, never mind yet. Listen,
Just
listen.
study.
Study
Just
first.
prepare for the presentation.
So kindergarten, as they get older, they're having rapid physical growth. So you want to make sure the room and the objects in the room are appropriate for their size, like the right size chairs, right size tables where they can sit up comfortably and do activities there. And you can start establishing classroom rules at this age to help manage the class. And as they get older, they can get used to now having rules to follow. So it's a good age to introduce
Can you
those.
give us a concrete example of this classroom rule that you have done in Canada?
Yeah, so one of the rules that we try to implement, we're very gracious because they're kids, but just to give you an idea of like the direction that we try to lead them in. So no talking when the teacher's talking is one of the rules.
That's very important.
Right, and then no running around when it's not time to run around. But
Hands to your sides.
right,
JP, hands to your sides.
Close your mouth.
No eating yet of your apple while teacher is teaching the story.
yes. And at this age, their thinking is very concrete. So the simpler the rules, the better.
Yes.
And also for Bible lessons, you don't want to introduce too many metaphors or imagery yet, because their thinking is so concrete, it might confuse them. So you want to keep the lessons plain and simple as well. And yeah, you can emphasize kindness and prayer at this age as well. And so as they're continuing to get older at primary 6 and 7, different activities will help a lot to, again, keep them interested and keep them stimulated. They're very eager to learn at this age and will ask a lot of questions. And also at this age, you want to emphasize the truth of the Bible, because they're also learning they're watching lots of movies and learning lots of other like fantasy stories. So you want to set the Bible apart from those stories and emphasize that these things in the Bible, they really happened rather than just something that somebody made up. And as they continue to get older, middlers in 8 and 9s, here they're really starting to be attentive to adults and they're expressing feelings. This is really important because they have lots of feelings as a middler, and so you want to give them a safe place where they can express those properly so that they can know how to deal with them properly, and that'll help again with classroom management if they can express their feelings properly, and they can also start to get involved. This is a picture of Azzy, that's one of the pastor's daughters at my church, and you can see her here. She's already starting to really enjoy helping the younger kids, and yeah, also at this age you can encourage them to read and pray on their own even at home, not just at Sunday school. And so juniors, 10s and 11-year-olds, their irrational, logical, and reasonable self-identity and self-independence is starting to form. So yeah, they're really just becoming like adults but smaller, right? And so you can really start to invest in a relationship with them because they have such unique personalities. Obviously they're gonna click with some leaders better than other leaders. So it's good to have a diverse team and then also be able to find out who you're clicking with and be able to disciple them really intentionally. And yes, you can encourage them to bring their friends at this age too. As they're getting older, their parents are more willing to let them go out and explore and do extracurricular activities. So they're more likely to be invited by a friend and actually go, even if they're not regulars at the church that you're going to. And yeah, as I mentioned before, it's important to emphasize discipleship and be really relational with them at this age. Okay, so that was it for the sociological aspect, but for societal trends, we need to consider the social and cultural influences and the way that they affect the Christian education of children. So this picture here, this was taken not too long ago, just in the midst of COVID and the restrictions. That was an example of like a societal trend. And so because we couldn't be with them physically, at our church we had sort of drive-by events where they stayed in their cars, so it was safe and there was no contact. But this was a really good way to still keep a relationship with the kids and get them out of their house and still help them recognize that the church is still active and involved even amidst all the restrictions that were happening at the time. So these are some other societal trends and challenges. Divorce, again, Christian families aren't immune to these things, so divorce is still something very real that happens. So these are two things that we can do to help combat the negative effects of this. To have self-contained lessons, that's important because when a family goes through divorce, sometimes the child will have joint custody, which means they won't be there every week because sometimes they'll be with their dad and then other weeks they'll be with their mom. Maybe they go to different churches, maybe one of the families or one side of the family doesn't go to church at all. So if you have a lesson in your Sunday school plan that overarches more than 1 week, then they will only get half of the lesson. So to have self-contained lessons and to have like a complete takeaway from the week can be really helpful for the child.
In the Philippines, we do not have divorce yet. It's not yet being passed.
Oh, really?
And will never be, I think. It's still a Catholic church. A Catholic
Oh, I did not know
nation.
that actually.
But we have separation.
Uh,
Sometimes they just separate. They
Ah,
just
yeah.
part ways. No? And I don't know if you have put there in your societal trends, but the OFWs too. There may be no divorce in the family between the couples, the father and the mother, but the OFWs, it's the same with this, the trauma of the parents being away.
Right. Yeah, so that's a good point. Maybe my wording could be different, but yeah, for separation in general, consistent staff helps with that largely because maybe if they're traumatized, it'll be hard for them to create relationships. So if you have the same staff that's always there, then the familiarity and the consistency will help the child to create a meaningful relationship. And then for abuse, yes, it's important to train your staff to be able to identify the symptoms and allow them or help them to know what to do in the case of abuse. I'm not sure what the procedure is for here in the Philippines specifically, but
I think they have a desk for this. Vince is you're a policeman, you are a licensed police, not criminal, but policeman. But di ba you are aware that there's a desk for children and women protection? Di ba? And people can just go to the desk and report. Is that also being done here in Baguio?
Yes, yes, there is in every police station. And
Okay.
there's also support staff under the social welfare
Oh, that's good.
SW.
But in big churches, they are having this identifying symptoms. But for the small churches, what about you? What about you, Christy? Do you have this? Are your teachers trained to identify symptoms of abuse, domestic violence, maybe, or being abused? There are many forms of abuses, by the way. No. Grabe ang Pilipinas, no? So behind. We are supposed to be doing this, even in your church art, yung symptoms, especially when you are doing community outreach. That way to also protect the children. No?
Yes, just like you said, man. The goal here is really to protect the children.
So there must be a training. Someday when there's a training for your Sunday school teachers, you have to include this. Magandang ano yan, magandang activity yan sa inyo.
Right.
That can be a good proposal, by the way, in the ministry for children. Proposal to train Sunday school teachers, children's ministers about this. Okay?
Yes. And then,
Thank you, John, for having this. By the way,
Yeah, of
what do you
course.
mean screen staff?
yeah, so that was going to be my next point. So screen
I'm just
staff,
so,
I'm not
I'm just
sure.
so eager, no?
Yeah, no.
I'm the only one. All right, move on.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you have this here in the Philippines, but do you have background checks for like to see a person's past, to see if they've been incarcerated or if they've been in jail before, things like that?
Question: in your
Yes.
place, in your church, how do you do it? So you can teach us.
So what we do in Canada, the staff or the person who wants to volunteer to be in the children's ministry, and this is happening for like a lot of other jobs as well. Especially if any job has to deal with kids, they have to go to the police station and get a background check. Yeah, or
Well, in
get
the Philippines,
screened.
they just whoever wants to volunteer, they just volunteer. No background check. But you said you are
Yeah.
doing background check.
Background checks, yeah, and this is just to make sure that the people who are involved in interacting with the kids are safe. They don't have a history of violence or crimes or anything like that. And this is just for the interest of the child to make sure that they're in a safe environment with safe people.
I think here in the Philippines, we're not doing that not much anymore because I think we just know each other.
Yeah,
Sometimes
and that helps
it's a
as
family
well.
church,
Right.
so you know each other very well.
That's good. So then maybe this would not be necessary for a case like that. But yeah, this is just an example of what you can do if abuse is a problem. And then,
Stress problem.
yes, so stress, I'm sure everyone experiences stress, so
Yeah.
even kids. So you want to make sure that you have a relaxing environment, especially for, as you saw earlier, like junior leaders and kids that are involved with helping the other kids. You don't want to put too much pressure on them and make church a stressful time for them. You want it to be relaxing so that they can still enjoy it and enjoy being there on the Sunday. Otherwise, they're going to start to resent church, and that's not what we want.
That
And-
can be a good paper, you know, Steve. What are the stressors causing stress to your Sunday school teachers in your church? That can be a good paper. Yeah, Pastor Sam Galino,
Yeah, very good
Pastor
topic.
Sam Galino worked on his thesis. The title is Burnout Among the Nazarene Pastors. It was beautiful.
Mhm.
But thank you just for making this another topic for
Yeah, of course.
Christy. This is topic. Alright.
And then another example of what we can do to help with stress is show them real examples of in the Bible of characters who failed and God still loves them and God still used them. And that way, when they do fail, they don't feel like it's the end of the world or they're not too anxious or stressed out or traumatized. But they can recognize that this is just a part of life that happens and it's okay. And then also, again, just really practically, we just listen to them. If they're having problems, you can be that space for them to express it so that they're not just holding it all in. And then when you know what's stressing them out, it's easier to address those things. And the reluctance to make commitments. So this is, I guess this might be very Western, but there's a lot of, among adults and young adults, a lot of people that don't want to commit to serving. So they'll not join any team or ministry in the church because they don't want to commit. They like having their free time. They like having freedom and choice. And so something we can do is to always follow up with people and contact them. Because when people say that they're gonna serve on a Sunday, it's good to just make sure that they know how valuable their presence would be there, and so that can encourage them to follow up with their commitment.
Understaffed or not, we have in the Philippines now, especially in here in Baguio, there are less and less volunteer teachers to handle Sunday school for kids. They do not
So
want to
it's common here
commit
too.
anymore.
Mhm.
Christy, that's also a good paper. Find out why is it, why are they reluctant to make commitments to serve as a volunteer teacher in Sunday school? That's a good paper in your church alone. Why are they not committing? There could be reasons, no?
Mhm.
What do you think it can be?
Lots of papers for Christy.
Oh, Christy, it's all for you, yeah?
Yeah, and just a side note for these pictures, this is Jessica Benner. She was the head for a long time of our children's ministry, and she helped mentor me a lot. She's the most kind person ever.
Let me ask, art in your church, what do you also encounter this reluctance to make commitments?
Most of our adults who have talents, they are committed to worship team.
To worship team.
That's good.
So they prefer being a worship leader and worship leading rather than teach the very naughty kids in the church. That's
Right.
true. That
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah,
no?
that could be it.
All right.
Mhm.
What about in your church, Pastor Vince? Because if you say that, they are all committed, then how many teachers do you have?
I
Not
don't
much? You don't have?
I force them because no one commits.
You do not want. What do you think? Do you think could be the reason why they are not committing in children's ministry or to serve in the children's ministry?
Everybody have work.
Busy.
In the children, as compared to music, is if you teach children, you will really have to spend much in preparation.
Yes.
Mhm. That's
But in
true.
music,
Just the focus on songs and on your skill.
Mhm.
Christy, in your church, thank you, Pastor Vince. In your church, why do you think they are reluctant? Just give me one factor, one reason why not.
I think because mostly the teachers came from youth. Maybe
Okay.
the old ones are like they just let us do it. Maybe
Okay.
they have that kind of mindset.
Alright. Okay. That's a good one. There could be so many reasons.
Mhm.
Let's move on to the next. Others for something?
So that was all the cultural topics that I had to talk about for today. But the next point that I want to bring up is identifying the relevant needs of the church. And as I mentioned before, your church will have unique needs depending on their values and such. But it's important to consider key issues in designing the infrastructure, which is like how the church is set up and organized, which will support the ministry. And this is a picture of some of our junior leaders who are helping to do worship, and even though they can't play instruments, they formed a dance team where they can do actions to help get the kids involved. All right, so the first, and by the way, this is the structure of this topic. It was taken from Luke 2:52, I think.
Yes.
Yes, and it was talking about how Jesus was raised and how he grew up in wisdom and stature and had favor with God and favor with man. So those are how this part's broken down. So the wisdom part of the curriculum, or wisdom part of the children's ministry, is what curriculum you're going to have, like what lessons you're going to want to teach them, what Bible stories, things like that, and what methods. Do you want more coloring sheets to get them engaged, or maybe they're engaged with more songs, or maybe they're engaged in making a play. And yeah, these, again, it'll be different for your church, but these are the things that we need to think about. And for stature, how is the ministry going to be organized? Depending on the kids that you have, will you have separate groups for infants all the way to middlers, and then have juniors separate, or do you have enough older kids to separate juniors, middlers, and toddlers and kindergartens and such, things like that. For home ministry, that's another thing to think about. So how can you be ministering to their families, like at home, or how can you encourage them to keep up the faith even when they're not at church? So if you give them activity sheets to work on at home, that could be a possibility. Maybe memory verses that they can practice at home. And then again, this not just helps the kids, but also helps their families, because they'll be practicing at home, their parents will be helping them, and so it's a way to minister to the parents as well. And then just a very practical thing to think about, do you have the appropriate facilities? If you have lots of different groups of kids, do you have enough rooms for those groups of kids?
Safe,
Things like
safe
that.
rooms.
Yes, safe and clean rooms. So, favor with God, the foundation of your children's ministry. So for us at my church, so separate from the curriculum, we had things that we repeated every single week, and we call them our core values. So our core values were God made me for a purpose, He chose me through Christ, and He loves me so that I can love others. And so that's just an example of what your foundation could look like. And maybe it's different for your church, but for us, it was really easy to go back to those three simple things every week. So even if we had a new kid, or if the kid had been there for a long time, we could always repeat those three things, and so they could always go back to those core values whenever they had questions, or if we didn't have super complicated lessons that week, we could just always pull from the foundation of our children's ministry. And for worship, yes, just really practically, what do you want your worship to look like? Maybe you'll have a band or a team, or maybe you'll have video and like music playing from a phone or speakers, things like that.
In our church, we allow the kids to worship with the adults, with their parents.
Yeah.
But
that's
during the
huge.
sermon, then I take them. We go to the room, and then we have the Sunday school.
Yeah.
What about in others? Do you have your own band? Wow naman, so kayo. Do you have your own band and own worship with the kids? JP, sa church
If
mo?
TDC po ma'am, after the when the sermon was going to begin, ma'am, all the children will be sent to and they
To the
have
respective
a-
groups.
Yeah.
Okay. What about church in your church in Isabela?
In Isabela, the Bible study is first before and then after the Bible study, all the children will gather in the church, and we worship together until it finishes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's good.
Also, what about
My as a mission in the Philippines, also the children involved with the church during the worship time, so it's very noisy.
what about in Canada?
Yeah, so
Because they are all migrating to Canada, after. No, I'm just kidding. So what about in Canada? Do you have your own separate worship for the kids?
yeah, again, it depends on the church, and it's going to look different for every church. So I've been to churches where, like you explained, the kids were with us for the worship part and then separated for the sermon part. The church that these pictures are from, where I served at for a long time, we had a separate worship for the kids, so they would get dropped off at the kids area immediately as the family would come to the church, and then separate worship for each, not for each age group, but the bigs had a worship, and some weeks we had a band, some weeks we just played videos, but it was nice because the songs could be more directed for kids, and they had actions that helped them become more engaged and things like that. But yeah, it's again different for every church, and there's no wrong way to do it. You just have to find out what works for your church. And then for evangelism and discipleship, again, we talked about how certain age groups are more likely to invite friends, but again, you can encourage any age group really to invite their friends as long as they're willing. And again, it's important to be really intentional in relating to the kids and discipling them, especially if they have an interest to start serving, or if they're asking lots of questions about your faith and God. It's good to nourish those curiosities and help them to grow. And so for Favor with Man, service and outreach, there's things you can do for your local community. In Canada, one of the things that the youth, a little bit older, but the youth were able to do is shovel driveways because we have lots of snow everywhere. And our church at the time, it was just in a school which was surrounded by lots of houses with their own driveways that would get filled with snow. So that was like an example of outreach that you could do. You could do bottle drives, you can do lots of different things, but it's something that you should think about for your children's ministry because you want to encourage them to have an impact on the local community around you. And that can help also too with outreach because people will see that happening and they'll say, oh, there's something really cool going on at this church and they're really making a difference. So yeah, I would encourage to think about that as well. And then for within the church community itself. So yeah, it sounds, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like a lot of your children's ministry is already pretty actively engaged with the rest of your church community. But for us in Canada, especially the church that I was at before, it was very separated before because we had a children's ministry in one area and then like the rest of a big church in a different area. So we tried to have events and things where like performances, for example, for Christmases and Easter, to have the kids practice a song or something that they could perform for the rest of the church, and the rest of the church would be able to see that the children's ministry was thriving and still being engaged. So that was something that we had to think about, but again, different for every church.
See the beauty of children's ministry. I hope you're getting ideas, no?
Good. So those were philosophical issues, and now for personnel issues. This is personnel with an N-E-L at the end, not just personal issues. But this is about the staff and volunteers that you'll have at your church who are involved and essentially putting on the children's education part of the church. So things to think about is selection. What kind of qualities would you want the people in your children's ministry to have? Maybe it would be beneficial to have a job description if what you're looking for is very specific. But again, different for every church. If, for example, you just really need people, maybe you're going to be less selective and you'll just welcome anyone who's willing to volunteer. We've definitely had moments like that as well. For recruitment, who's going to do the recruiting and how will it be done? Maybe it'll just be a bulletin saying we need volunteers. Maybe you'll have a leader in the church specifically asking people to volunteer depending on who you want again.
I think especially when you have a director in your Sunday school or in your CE director, the job description can also be part of the orientation for the new teachers.
Mm-hmm.
That should be number one in the list.
That's
You
good.
need to train your Sunday school teachers. You need to be having trainings. And you need to include in the concept, in the training topics, the job description, your expectation of them, even when they are also volunteers.
Right. Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, ma'am. Because the next section is all about training and introductory training. So as new staff, you can maybe have an outline of what your expectations are of your church specifically. And it's also important to have ongoing training, even for people who have been serving for a long time, just to keep their minds fresh, and so it doesn't get stagnant and they don't get lazy with some of the standards that you might have at your church. And ongoing training is a good reminder for them to keep themselves sharp and, again, really emphasize the value of what they're doing and how important it is that they do it well. And for deployment, do you want them to be on a contract, or are you going to let them kind of come and go as their availability changes, things like that. And then how are you going to support them and affirm them? And yeah, that's very important to think about because a lot of, at least in my experience, a lot of children's ministry workers would feel like they're not getting a lot of support because as children's ministry workers, they're typically not hearing the sermon that everyone else is hearing on the Sunday, so they're not getting fed in the same way. So how are you going to support them? Maybe there's like going to be another service, or or maybe they can watch online or something like that. But yeah, there's different solutions to this, but it's still something very important to keep in
And
mind.
maybe that could also be the reason why they are not, they are reluctant to commit.
Exactly. True.
There's the connection there.
Okay, so that's it for the relevant needs part. And then now here we can just talk about some strategies So with all the information that I kind of threw at you and loaded you with, what are some things that we can do about all of that? So one of the things that we did was just praying regularly, and so as we set up before the kids come, our team would all pray together and check on each other, how our weeks were. Just in a way, we're ministering to each other because we're not able to get the same experience as everyone else. We were kind of our own, like small group, church group, life group. And so we would pray together regularly, and then we would have our Sunday school, and then after all the kids leave, we still meet again just to talk about how things went. And then we would pray again for all the kids that had come and all the kids that were coming. And yeah, it's just a good practice I found to, again, really emphasize the value of what it is you're doing and to recognize God's hand in all of the work that's going on. Exploration, visiting other churches, and just like what we're doing here, talking about the different strategies at other churches and kind of recognizing how you can apply different strategies and ideas to your own ministry and your own children's ministry. So that's a good idea as well. And surveying, knowing your own church. So maybe you want to just practically ask your church like what they expect from children's ministry, or like how old their kids are, or how many kids for each family is there. I mean, I assume if the church is smaller, you won't need to have something like this because everyone will essentially know each other anyway. But it is still good to ask because maybe they have specific problems that are going on in their homes, and so they maybe want you to ask or tackle a specific curriculum or topic in Sunday school so that they can apply it in real life. And for training, again, we talked about this a lot, but yeah, it's just really important to make it a priority, to make sure that your staff is well equipped for the service that they're going to be doing. And again, for strategies or for Christian education of children, it's just important to be open to change because every generation is so different from the last one, and so you want to just keep being innovative, keep being creative, and yeah, just keep things fresh because the same thing that worked 20 years ago might not be working so well now. So definitely be open to change. And so yeah, I was gonna just open up the floor. We've kind of been talking already during the presentation about what you guys have been doing at your churches, but yeah, if anyone else has any ideas with the information that I shared, feel free to share some ideas or maybe what you're already doing at your own churches.
If you are to ask your Sunday school teachers, because you are all ministers, if you are to ask them this question, in what or in which area would you be needing a training? What do you think would be their answer to your question? Palagay nyo. Because you will be making a proposal, training program for your children's ministers, and later on you will be doing that. So, but if you will be asking your children's ministers or Sunday school teachers this question, what in which area would you be needing support or training? Do you have any idea as for their areas for improvement, Christy? Do you think, based on your observation?
Since they are still young teachers, maybe they need more training on teaching skills,
strategies, methods maybe for children. Because they are not all early childhood education specialists, no?
Right.
They're not all undergraduate college degree. So you need to provide trainings on that, the different methods. Alright, what about you, Pastor Vince, in your church? Ano ang lacking, the missing skills that you would like to develop in them?
And perhaps almost the same because the problem sometimes is they could not handle the very naughty ones.
So classroom management.
Yeah.
Classroom management.
How to get the attention of the children.
Alright. So what about you, JP?
In my own town, I think curriculum.
More on the group. What do you mean? They
They have no materials what to teach the children, and then most of the volunteers moms are coming from the youth group, so they have lack of skills.
to handle
This woman.
the children, to be there and how to stand there and deliver the lesson. So more on lesson preparation and lesson, maybe lesson creation of lesson plans. No? Okay, it's not easy to be a teacher, by the way.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
It takes a degree to do that. All of those things that you are talking about. Art in your church.
In our church, we have one good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to train more teachers to be like her.
In the area of
One
trainings,
for activities.
focusing on activities.
Can you do
It's-
to your kids?
So it's not enough that you just teach the Bible stories. What about the arts? What about the crafts?
Yeah.
So something like that. Music too.
If I will go to teach, I will bring their slides like that.
PowerPoint.
Boxes, and they will climb like that.
Alright, so you see training of the teachers.
It's good.
Mm.
Yeah, very important to have people who are trained.
Mm.
Yeah, alright, thanks for sharing, guys. So to conclude, just to go over some of the things that we talked about here today. So we went over the different developmental stages and how they all have unique needs, and we need to be aware and address the societal trends and culture. And again, they're going to be different because in Canada we had some differences than here in the Philippines, and I'm sure in Vietnam or Thailand or wherever you guys end up, there'll be different trends in the culture. So it's good to be aware of those. And also know the values and needs of your church specifically. And we went over some questions to ask so that you can help identify those as well. And then yes, apply strategies and pray a lot. 'Cause, yes,
I believe those.
very, very important. So that's my presentation. This book here, The Foundations of Ministry, that's our main textbook, and that's where I got most of this information, to be honest. And there's even more there that I couldn't fit into all of these slides. So if you ever are needing to look for more information, that's definitely a good place to go. And then there's another book that can help as well. And then, yeah, all the pictures were from Experienced Church Kids, which is my old church back in Canada, Calgary, Alberta. So, yeah, thank you for listening.
Imagine the book is as thick as this, and you only have to present for how long? So do you have any questions at all? Do you have questions? Do you have clarifications? Would you like to share about your own context in relation to what Brother John presented to us? Can you imagine your role as young pastors? Do you now see the importance of children's ministers in your church? That's why you need to take care of your volunteers. If they volunteer, you take care of them.
Right.
You know, sometimes when you do not even have the money to provide, at least words of affirmation. You know. What about the ones online? What can you say? So I think we will not, a while ago we keep interrupting because you see John, I'm the type of student wherein I need to ask the question that way.
Right, that's
That is
good.
to keep me alive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No?
for sure.
And I like that. But there are also presenters who do not want to be interrupted.
No, I don't mind at all.
Yeah. I
Interrupting
like it to be
a little.
interactive. No? And in fact, I have a lot of questions too, trying to contextualize what you have been telling us. When you make your proposals, by the way, now I have the idea of the proposal. I think for the children's ministry in your church, you need to create a proposal. Like if you will be making a training, what kind of training will you be making? And a while ago you talk about training. There must be a budget for that, time, place, and who will be doing it. Who will do what topics will you be creating for your teachers, specifically in your own church? And that is a good project. I should have books. Anyway, I will be asking that when you make your proposals, by the way. And you will be turning in every Friday. Okay?
All right. Thank you for listening, everybody.
I think they are not listening. No? They are, I think Art and Vince and the pastors here, they are thinking about, oh Lord. It's not easy to be a pastor, no?
Right.
Yes.
It's like a dream for me. You're still very far from the discussion. I think in the Filipino context, especially here, is that we have small churches and maybe we cannot have that staff and even curriculum. We don't really proper curriculum.
In CE5, here at PBTS, in the CE1 is more on the educational ministry of your church. CE2 is more on principles of teaching. How to make your church, your school, your classroom come alive. CE3 is also into that, part 2 of the CE2. CE3 is more on theories. What do you need to do to manage your classroom? No? CE4 is on the different Bible study methods. CE5 is curriculum making. Those I handle. No, in fact, I also train one faculty in CPU for the curriculum development. I train her to train her students on how to create and design and conceptualize curriculum topics and implement it. I am also using the Hookbook too. That's why you do not underestimate your topic, ZAO. The Hookbook is a very effective lesson format. Thank you, John,
Thank you.
for the chronic from Canada, CC, and thank you for the insights that we have learned. Let's have a takeaway on this presentation. I think for a takeaway, you don't have to be answering now. I will be giving to you remember the 3 tasks: analyzing your children's ministry, the SWOT analysis. In order for you to understand that, you don't even have to ask me, just Google. It's there, just Google. And then you create your analysis, the strengths, the weaknesses, areas for improvement, and threats to your children's ministry. Then you will be submitting it to me individually. Part 2 would be more on putting in here the organizational chart of your church. You also need to put it there, the vision, mission, and goal of your church.
Are we gonna feed it up there or make
You make your own. This is just a sample. Kaya it says here.
what?
You'll be making something like this. Do not make it complicated if it is not complicated.
Yeah.
Alright? If it's just very simple, so what? If you do not have children's ministry, then show it there. Okay? And then, again, the curriculum of your children ministry. Right? Like what kind of curriculum are they using? Are you buying it? For example, if you're buying at CSM, are you buying it from Cook? You're just receiving something from any publishing company, then put it there. The theological content of the curriculum is very important. All you need to answer is yes or no. Just encircle yes if it is yes, encircle no if it is no. If they are all no, something is wrong with your curriculum. Yeah? You see? And by the way, we will be discussing this more. Hindi, kasi nalagay ko na po sa group chat. Oo. You will be answering here right away. Okay? You will be using this as your template.
Soft copy would be
So,
sent.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay?
For next week, no?
Submit no on Friday. It says here, due August 5, 2022 at 4 o'clock p.m. That means, you know what that means? What? Ano?
Extension.
Kasi Friday,
Menstruation?
busy.
Extension.
Ay, kala ko menstruation.
Monday,
What?
Let it be Monday, ma'am.
Monday.
Because until Friday, we're still busy with class.
Yeah, right.
I will make it submit on Tuesday. Tuesday.
Ano yung isa lang mo, Wednesday?
Wednesday ako naman yung
Pasalamat na lang
Wednesday.
tayo.
Wednesday.
Thank you, ma'am.
Because Tuesday is CE3.
Because
So, in response to your topic, this is what you